It is 11 minutes to midday. A very good morning to you. It's still morning. A very good morning to you. This is the Mid Morning Show. I am your host, Lillian Thomas. How are you doing? I hope you're fantastic. The weather on this side of the world, we are in Kitengela County 034. The weather on this side of the world hasn't been very good for the entire week. Actually, I think the whole of Kenya. But I hope you are well and I hope you're doing fine. And if it's cold at your place, I hope you are keeping warm. If you are watching us for the first time, kindly subscribe to our pages. On Facebook, we are at a Farmers. On YouTube, we are at a Farmers Media. Just hit the subscription button and hit the notification bell every time we go live. You will always be notified, and every time we upload a video, you will always get a notification. And as we want to start the discussion, remember you always send me your comments and your feedback on our Facebook page. We are at our Farmers. You can write your comments on our comment section. Tell me where you're watching the show from. Tell me what's happening in your side of the world concerning agriculture. So today, I want us to talk about performing agriculture in a permanent culture. It is a term most commonly known as permaculture. That is what we'll be talking about. If you are not aware of the term, exactly, that's why I'm here. I'll just introduce you to it, try and make you understand what it is about, and then you can tell me if it's something that you really want to do. Considering we've had a very long discussion about sustainable agriculture, it has been going on for so long because eventually, wherever we are right now at the world, or wherever we are looking at, whatever we are foreseeing, we just need to be doing sustainable agriculture if we are to be able to feed the 9 billion people we will be having in the country by the time we're getting to 2050. And also, in order for us to help achieve the SDG goals that we have concerning zero hunger by the time we are getting to 2030. Okay, so sustainable agriculture is a thing we have to look at, and today the form of sustainable agriculture we'll be talking about is permaculture. But before we get into the discussion, let me start with the agricultural news we have in Kenya. Yesterday, the county government of Nakuru rolled out a tree planting thing that they will be doing in the streets in order to increase the number of trees they have in the country. Again, last week in Tana River County, they launched a 22-day livestock vaccination program that is actually aiming at targeting 70% of the livestock population in the country. And it was launched by the County Director of Veterinary Services, Dr. Paul Mwamburi. And then another thing that I saw, and I saw it was a discussion on our Facebook page, on the Africa Farmers Club page, but I'll just tell you what the news was about, and we will just get into that. That discussion will actually do a show on it, and we'll try and see what actually happens when these things happen in the country. So KEFIS is the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, urges the youth, women, and farmers to increase their volumes of unripe bananas and broccoli for export services to South Korea. So, this is as a result of a visit that was done by the Foreign Affairs CS, Ambassador Monica Juma. It was done in October 2018. She visited South Korea, and among the pacts and the treatments that they actually signed, they want Kenya to export more unripe bananas and broccoli. And the good thing about it, you don't really require much. You see, the way in the international market you require a lot of things concerning the health. Here, the only thing that you need is a phytosanitary certificate from KEFIS. Only, just as simple as that. But I remember the discussion that was going on Facebook was about how do people actually get this tender to export? How does this thing happen? Who are the people who are left to do the exportation and stuff? But we'll be looking at that on another day. So let's get into our discussion today. Today we are talking about permaculture. Permaculture is more of a combination, or depending on the time you are living in. Initially, permaculture was a combination of permanent agriculture. Right now, in the current era, people actually feel like permaculture is a combination of permanent culture. So for us, it is more of permanent agriculture being practiced in a permanent culture. Okay, so we've had all types of agriculture happening around, and they are not very, very sustainable. And it actually pushes more people to do a lot of research on how we can do sustainable agriculture, because we need to coexist. We need to coexist in the environment. The environment consists of a lot of things. We have the land resources, we have the water resources, we have the human beings in in this whole context, and we want a coexistence that is very, very okay, whereby one component is not really diminished, one component doesn't get extinct, one component doesn't get to survive as it should. So permaculture is actually trying to develop a sustainable human settlement in a food production environment. So let's start by giving you an example. You have a scenario whereby most farmers that I know, maybe you can tell me what is in your case. Most farmers that I know, you find traditionally, like my mother, she has a small shamba. In the small shamba that we have, our house is there, okay? So we have our house, we have a small shamba. We keep actually some few hens. So we have like a poultry place, kidogo, and then she keeps goats. So we have a small place where she keeps goods. Around our compound, we still have a borehole, because the place we have, we don't really have tap water. So we have a borehole in the place. Also, we have put, I don't know if you have gone to really African societies whereby you find people who use especially the iron sheets. And when it rains, they try to harvest the water. So you find they have like the ridges that they use to harvest the water. So that has also been installed in our system. So every time it is raining, the water is harvested. So you have that context. The whole essence of permaculture is trying to see how do all these things coexist kabisa vizuri in a very appropriate way, because you have the water resources that need to be maintained, you have the land resources that need to be maintained, you have people who are living around this place that really need to be kept in a very sustainable way. So it is basically the harmonious integration of the landscape, people and people in a sustainable way. So the landscape has all these things of the land, water, and everything else, and then now and people in a sustainable way. So the things that are contained in this whole landscape, it's land resources, people, and generally the environment. And then, we've always had a whole debate of the environment and how we are degrading the environment. And the whole essence of sustainable agriculture, we really want to maintain the environment. We want to do less harm to the environment, because for so long, if you are looking at Africa right now, yes, let us use Africa as an example. Africa's major problem when it comes to agricultural production, it's not even about, oh, we don't have rain, oh, we are having droughts, oh, are having floods. But the main issue right now is that our land is degraded. Our soils are very degraded, mainly because we have been doing tillage way too long, way too long. We do continuous tillage over and over again. We are like right now, it's the planting season. So people were tilling land in March, they till land in March, they plant whatever they're planting. By the time they are harvesting in July, August, they are starting to prepare again land for the short rains in October. So again, they go back to tillage. And because most of the African farmers that we have really don't do more of the perennial crops, they do annual crops. So you have to be digging your farm over and over again. And then you look at the rainy seasons in Africa, most people work with the two rainy seasons. So, like, at the end of the year, you've done your tillage in your farm like two times. If you do that for like 7 years, it is a lot. It is a lot of tillage going on. Your land gets degraded, your soil gets degraded, your soil actually gets compacted, and now the crop production can't go on as it should be. And then we've always had another issue of water loss. Water loss happening in the environment. You find that, like right now, actually, there's something that I really saw yesterday in the news. So, yesterday I was watching the news, and a place in Kisumu, yes, I think Nyando is in Kisumu. Yes, Nyando is in Kisumu. Nyando is actually flooding. And I was looking at a certain farm whereby someone had planted maize. So, the maize is like 1 meter tall. Yeah, 1 meter tall. something like 1 meter tall, and then it has flooded. And we all know the damages that floods do to our shambas. Now, this person, one, your house is flooded. Two, your shamba is flooded. Three, remember when the floods happen, your crops don't get enough oxygen, okay? There is also another issue of waterlogging in your soils. And things like maize really don't need waterlogged soils. What they require is well drained soils. So, you see, again, we have started affecting the crop production that is harvesting. And I think it's one thing that keeps happening in Africa over and over again. A month ago, last month in April, the Kenya Red Cross Society actually told us we will be having floods in some parts of the country, and in some parts of the country, we'll be having droughts. So he cited to be having floods in more of the former Rift Valley province, Nyanza province, and a little bit of the central and eastern region. And then he cited to be having droughts in the northeastern region, so more of Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, and Turkana. But you find out when these things happen, like when we are actually having floods, when we are having floods and the floods are happening, there's a lot that can be done. Imagine if we had a scenario whereby we had constructed reservoirs, or rather, we had constructed dams. When this thing happen, you actually find you can really tap the water to be used for future purposes. But the system that we have, especially in our country, I remember yesterday, Noah Naseli Kadima was actually asking us, do we feel like the county government is doing enough in terms of, because agriculture is devolved, but when you come to the ground, oh, the farmers are complaining, we don't have enough extension services. Now you see the thing of flooding occurring, and disaster reduction is a thing. Disaster reduction is a thing that should be happening. So like you should be having ways put in place that you can actually mitigate a disaster when it happens, before it happens, considering that a larger percentage, whenever disasters strike, a larger percentage, actually agriculture, the agriculture sector absorbs a quarter of the disaster, of the effects when disaster happens, which is a very big percentage. And then we don't have system in place. We don't have a system in place that can actually help us mitigate the disaster and help us reduce the disaster. And as I was watching, so it is, was it the MP of that area was on like the spotlight and was being asked, now that this place has flooded and students are not going to school and the crops in the farms are being destroyed, what is the next action? And then this is when he's starting to think and like, we will see what we can do and mitigate. But you see, the loss has already happened. It is about time we try and see how we can actually really tap into that. In cases of floods, we avoid the excessive cases we have of runoff, water wastage, because the whole essence of permaculture, we want to maintain our soil, we want to maintain our water, we want to make sure that the person who is existing in this environment is in a sustainable environment. So the whole essence of permaculture is designed in a certain way that we maintain an agricultural productive ecosystem, like very, very productive, in that it is stable, it should be very stable. There shouldn't be an imbalance in the system. It actually ensures diversity. You had me mentioning something about you having crops, you having actually plants, like the whole thing, they coexist. And then the thing about the environment, the biodiversity in the environment really helps when we have different organisms in the environment, different plants. You remember the discussion we had about plant diversification, and we were like, we are actually losing a lot of our plant species. They are reducing. We have lost almost 75%. But all we want is diversity. You remember we said when we have the diversity, especially of the plants, we tend to have more nutritious plants to actually consume. People get more nutrients. We actually get more food. In a way, we actually aim at achieving food security when we have the diversity. When you have the animals and the poultry in your shamba, you tend to help maintain the diversity. So the whole system is actually aimed at maintaining stability, diversity, and actually building a resilient structure. If you remember our first discussion about sustainable agriculture, by the way, if you didn't watch that show, when you log into the farmers page, I think it's the first video that pops up on your screen about sustainable agriculture. Make sure you actually go back and listen to it. We had a very interesting discussion with an expert in the show. We were speaking to Mr. Absalom Ila from Maseno University, and he gave us a lot of highlights. Remember, sustainable agriculture is all about building a resilient system. I want to build a system that can sustain food production, ensure food security without any effect to the environment. Okay, more so about negative effects to the environment. So the negative effect to the environment is all about land degradation, water degradation, and then we have the issue of the greenhouse gases emission, which actually also play into this as a whole thing. So when we are looking at now all the components of permaculture, we have water harvesting, we have agriculture, we have forestry, which is a thing that I think we have really abandoned, mainly because you find a lot of people. Actually, the thing that's happening is people are actually harvesting forests. People are cutting down forests either to set up buildings, to set up industries, to set up companies, or rather, you are actually just cutting forests to burn charcoal and sell charcoal. But what is the effect when we have reduced forests in the country? Actually, I really like the thing that the county government of Nakuru rolled out yesterday about tree planting. I think it's about time we really need to restore the agriculture back to its place. If you, the point in Akwanga, if you cut down a tree, make sure you replace it with another one. It's okay if you are cutting down trees for maybe to burn charcoal and stuff. But when you do, make sure you are replacing the tree. But the problem that we have, people cut down trees and don't replace them. At the end of the period, we have less forest coverage. Remember, our forests act as water catchment areas, okay? Our forests act as windbreakers. They serve a whole purpose because they actually act as shelter to some of the animals and plant species that we have. Without them, these things can't exist. Like it has a whole lot of importance that it is actually very important that we actually maintain our forests. So permaculture actually looks into forestry, looks into waste management. So in terms of waste management, I can talk about, let me give a very good example of, you see, when you consume food and then you have food that remains, what do you do with the food? In Nairobi, I know, in our place, like the garbage is usually collected on Thursdays. And I know every time we have food remaining in our place and no one is going to eat it, and maybe it has gone bad or it has rotten, the first thing it's done, it's thrown into the dustbin. It is thrown into the dustbin. This is food that can actually, because this is wastage, that can actually be managed and used back into, more specifically, especially if you're doing agriculture, you can actually get it back into your farm. So permaculture actually looks at waste management. It looks at the animal system. I told you it is a whole balance because we have all these things in the environment. How do you keep your animals? How does the structure look like when you're keeping your animals? You remember there's a time we had a discussion and someone from Nigeria actually commented and said the way people are keeping a lot of animals, they are overgrazing, getting into people's farms, destroying crops. We are actually looking at this whole thing of animal systems. How do you keep your animals? What number do you keep your animals in your Kasmolka area? What do they feed on? How do you get food that they feed on? You know, it's a whole process because now imagine this scenario of the person from Nigeria who was saying that actually the animals get into their farms. So you plant your maize and then you wake up tomorrow morning, you find haya ng'ombe ziliingia zikadecide zitafanya vile zinataka. By the way, they feasted on your crops like nobody's business, and then there's no one to pay you, especially when you go to like a rural setup. In the rural setup, you find this thing of nijirani, this is my neighbor. So something bad happens and the only thing I can say is sorry. Is sorry good enough? No, it is not. It is not. Because you see, I have incurred losses. I prepared my land, I used seeds, and then everything is destroyed. How is sorry going to help this person in place? And then you find like the person I remember, I don't really remember the name of the person who said this. It wasn't Tijani. I don't really remember the name. But he said that the government ain't doing anything about it. So your crops are being destroyed, everything is going haywire in your shamba, but no one is really helping you out. So you're making losses at the end of the day. So we'll be telling you on how you will be keeping your animals, how the system works. It actually looks also at aquaculture and community development because people are staying in these environments. People are staying in these environments, they are the one making the communities to develop. So it is a whole thing that we are looking at and how it works. So you are looking at a system that really integrates food supply. So we are producing food and everything, and we are actually looking how do we integrate the food supply and how do we integrate the settlement of the people. The whole essence of permaculture is working with nature. So in permaculture, you have to have nature in mind as the first thing. Nature in mind as the first thing. Because there's a rule that says you work with nature, you don't work against nature. So you are making use of every single little thing you have in nature to help balance the ecosystem. So, in terms of maybe agricultural production and in terms of benefiting the human beings who are settling in these places. So, one golden rule that is usually in this particular field is once you care for the earth will take care of you. Once you take care of the earth will take care of you. The environment is a very funny place. The environment, if you take care of it, it actually gives you a lot of things. You know, when you maintain your environment visually and you are doing every the good practice, you find the plant species are increasing, the animals are increasing, and even when you destroy the environment, you always know the environment always finds a way of healing itself. Okay, so the whole essence is you take care of the earth, take care of the environment, and definitely it will take care of you. So when we are looking at permaculture, there are certain ethics that are really looked into in order to practice permaculture. And the first ethic is care for the earth. It's to care for the earth. So we are looking at these caring for the earth is basically about the environment. So our environment, we are looking at it in terms of the land, in terms of the water bodies that we have. So we are caring for the land that we have, and mostly the thing that we encourage in permaculture, especially about forestry, because forests actually help a lot in maintaining the soil, in increasing biodiversity that we really need in the world today. Because remember, I told you we have lost around 70% of the plant species that we are supposed to be having, like vanished, zimeenda. So we are left with 30%, and then you see we still have cases of starvation, hunger, I don't know, people are malnutritioned, people are not getting enough nutrients, which doesn't make sense, does it? No, I really don't think it makes sense. Which I think doesn't really make sense. So the first ethic is care for the earth. You care for your forest, you care for the waterways. And actually, when you are caring for the earth, you actually try to help, you try by regenerating fertility, especially with the land. You regenerate fertility, you can always regenerate fertility. It is our thing we did when we were talking about regenerative agriculture. That was last week. No, it was the other week. It was a show I did on regenerative agriculture. You try and regenerate the lost fertility. We noticed a lot of land in Africa has actually lost its fertility. So we are trying to regenerate its facility and improve on the biodiversity. The second ethic is caring for the people. Remember, we are trying to look at the people in existence with the environment and all activities happening. So, in caring for the people, you are ensuring that these people live in a sustainable way in this environment such that they are actually comfortable. And then the third ethic is reinvesting the surplus. So reinvesting the surplus is more about, you remember the thing I've said about wastage and waste management. So something like when you have food waste from your kitchen, you can actually use it as manure in your farm. Okay, by using compost from your animal waste and getting it back into your farm. So those are the ethics of permaculture. We want to go on a short break, but when we come back, we will be discussing all about principles of permaculture and how it really works, how the whole system is supposed to be working and functioning. But as we go on a break, you can keep sending me your comments and your feedback. Tell me where you're watching the show from. Tell me what you think about this whole system. How effective is it? How do you think it can work? Is it something that you've tried? You can tell me how your farm place looks like. How have you designed it? How does it coexist as we get even into the principles of permaculture? So you write your comments on my comment section on Facebook. We are at a farmers. On YouTube, we are at a farmers media. We'll be taking a short break. We'll be back in a few, so don't go away.
Mic check. Unanisikia? Is my sound okay?
Stand by in five, four, three, two, and one. You are on air.
Join me, Conrad Kibe, on the Farm Drive every weekday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. right here on A Farmers Media, where we tell you the story of an African farmer. We give you COVID-19 updates, and most interestingly, we give you the pan of the day. Follow us on all our social media platforms at A Farmers with a Z at the end on Facebook, and definitely A Farmers Media on YouTube. See you there. Allah. Allah. Allah.
A very good afternoon to you. This is the Mid Morning Show. I am your host, Lilian Thomas, and it is 12:25. So we started a little bit late, but unavoidable circumstances, and also um my co-host Nona Seli Kadima wasn't available today, but you'll be seeing him here next week. Tomorrow is a holiday, so we won't be here tomorrow. But I am glad that you've joined me for the show today, and we are talking about permaculture. Tell me where you're watching the show from. Tell me what you understand by permaculture. If you've understood my introduction, or if you need anything clarified, let me know in my comment section. On Facebook, we are at a farmers. On YouTube, we are at a farmers media. So the discussion that we're having today about permaculture, it's more of a continuation of the discussion we've always been having about sustainable agriculture. And we actually looked at different ways of actually practicing sustainable agriculture. You remember we looked at sustainable agriculture generally. We looked at conservation, tillage, if you really remember that. Yes, those are our past episodes. If you really missed that, you can go back and watch them. They are uploaded on our Facebook page at Our Farmers, on YouTube at Our Farmers Media, or some content kama kawaida, kama kawaida. But before we go on with this discussion, kama kawaida, mimi ni anti wa positive vibes. Anti wa positive vibes are right here from Kitengela. County 034, County 034 is Kajiado. For those who are not aware, that is where our offices are located at. If you really need any of our services, especially you need advice on agronomy, on soil testing, you need seedlings, you can always visit us at our offices in Kitengela, or rather contact us on our social media pages. We are at a farmers on Facebook. On YouTube, we are at a farmers media, or you can call us. Our number usually runs up on your screen, but if you never see it, I can actually say it to you. Our number is 0700-288-185. 0700-288-185. You can always contact us. There will be some beautiful lady over there answering your calls. You don't want to miss that. But anyway, before that, let us do the quote of the day. The quote of the day today is, okay, I have a director who is really disturbing, but she does a good work. Big up to you, Sarah. I know you're doing a good work. Okay. The quote of the day today is, whatever you are, be a good one. Whatever you are, be a good one. This is a quote by Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is a former president of the United States of America. So the quote says, I'll repeat it again: whatever you are, be a good one. I think it's a discussion we had here someday with Sarah. And I will say, if you are doing something, you are either doing it fully, 100%, or you're not doing it at all. Whatever you are, be a good one. If I am doing the presenting job that I am doing, I ought to be good. I don't think there's someone who will really want to come and listen to someone who is not really qualified, who is very shady, very shaky. No, you don't want to be doing that. If my director wouldn't be as efficient, no one would want to work with her. Whatever you are, be a good one. You are either 100% good or you're not. There's no in between, like 80%. Me, I always say hakuna kitu kama 80%. There's no 80%, there's no 90%. It is either 100 or zero. Whatever you are, be a good one. Whatever you do it fully 100%, or don't do it. Acha kufanya vitu shady. It is not appropriate, it is not even fair. So whatever you are, be a good one. Kama bado hujafika kwa hiyo ligi, strive to be good. Learn. You have information out here, you have everything on YouTube. Learn, be the best in everything that you are doing. Getting back to our discussion today is about permaculture, and I've really introduced what permaculture is about, how we are trying to, it is more of a system whereby you have sustainable human settlement in a food production environment. So you have food production going on in terms of agriculture, you have animals in place, you have all these activities happening. And some of the activities we mentioned are water harvesting, we have community development, we have waste management, we have forestry happening in the same environment. But we really need it to be very sustainable, considering that human beings are settling in this same place. And we looked at the ethics that permaculture works with. And one thing that I said that you really have to have it very clear, the golden rule that works for permaculture is, once you care for the earth will take care of you. Once you care for the earth will take care of you. Mother Earth is a very interesting planet. You give it the good, it gives you the good. You give it the bad, it gives you the bad. You destroy it, it will destroy you completely. You maintain it, it helps you live in a very harmonious way. So the golden rule in permaculture is, once you care for the earth will take care of you. And some of the ethics of permaculture that we discussed, the first ethic was actually caring for the earth, caring for the earth in terms of the forest, the waterways, in terms of trying to regenerate fertility, especially in our degraded lands, more so in Africa, and actually trying to maintain the biodiversity. The second ethic was caring for the people. Remember, the people are actually staying in this environment. You have to ensure that they are staying sustainably in this particular environment. It is very important. The third thing was reinvesting the surplus. And I said the surplus, look at it in terms of, you have harvested your crops, and then you see the way you harvest maize, and then you have the stocks that actually remain. Instead of you wasting them, you actually use them back into your farm as manure. Okay, or rather, you have food that remained in your kitchen. Instead of you throwing it away, you can always use it as kitchen waste. Get Transform it into manure to be used in your farm. The animal waste, especially the cow dung, the pollution. One thing that actually happens, my mother my mother is Kisi. The Kisis, they love traditional vegetables. So she does a lot of managu in our small kitchen garden. She does a lot of managu and a lot of saga. Saga is spider plant, managu is African nightshade, or rather black nightshade, whatever you call it. Managu, people call it in Swahili mnavu, I think. Saga is deck in the Luo language, if I'm not wrong. So it is something of the sort. So she does a lot of managu and a lot of saga. And I will tell you one thing that she does. I don't know how true that is, by the way. I don't know if it actually works or it doesn't. Because we have hens, we have a little bit of poultry. She always takes, you see the way you keep cleaning your poultry place? So you sweep the whole week. And then she doesn't like really throw away the waste. She piles it up. Alafu at the end of the week. So this is her theory. I haven't said it is correct. Don't misquote me. I haven't said it's correct. She takes the waste. She says, whenever you put the poultry waste in the farm, automatically managu will grow. So that's what she says. And that is her theory. Sijasema it is correct. It is not politically correct. I don't think it is. But she always says anywhere you have hens and you have the poultry waste, if you like spread it in your farm, manago will grow. And if you have cow dung waste, if you have cow dung, she says cow dung actually makes spider plants to grow, so the saga grows. So for her, she will collect her whole poultry waste and then go back and collect her cow dung, alafu anazitupa kwa shamba. Magic happens kama kawaida, managu yake inamea, sanga inamea. So I don't know how true that theory is, or how false that theory is, but that is more of reinvesting the surplus. If you have waste in your farm, so like the animal waste, you don't really have to throw it away. You can actually always use it back in your farm. You see, things like making compost manure, and remember, compost manure is very good. It adds organic matter content into your soil, it adds carbon into your soil, it helps your soil actually, it increases the water holding capacity of your soils, which is exactly what we need if we really need to regenerate our soils. You remember the discussion we had about regenerative agriculture, and those are the things we looked at. So I want to tell you the principles of permaculture and how the whole system works, how the system should be working for you, especially if you are a farmer and you have all these things happening in your farm place. Like uko na shamba, unapanda mimea. Mimea ni plants. Yes, you're growing plants and you have maybe poultry and you have maybe a cow or goats. People prefer goats. But the maintenance of goats is very easy. We have goats. The maintenance is very easy, but problem is, hey, the stench that goats have. Especially, have you ever met a goat that has, have you ever been close to a goat that has been rained on? Another whole disaster. Yes. So if you have plants, you have animals, you have a system whereby you harvest water, and yourself, you are settling at the same place, but you want everything to be happening, and you want it to be happening sustainably. Sustainably is the word. Sustainably is the word. Remember, something sustainable is something that actually works. It is a long-term thing. Hakuna hizi vitu za short term, vitu ndogo ndogo zinaisha as soon as they started. No, it is a long-term thing, a very long term. And that is what we are aiming at. Actually, that is what the Food Agricultural Organization has been campaigning for, in order for us to be able to attain zero hunger by the time we are getting to 2030. And remember, that is one of the SDG goals we are working with right now. And if we are to achieve food security by the time we are getting to 2050, because you see, our population by 2050 is predicted to be at 9 billion. We are at 7 billion right now. So 9 billion. How do we feed these 9 billion people when already we are struggling to feed 7 billion people? We have rising cases of hunger, starvation, malnutrition, undernutrition, and it's a whole disaster. And we really need to do agriculture in such a way that we are able to sustainably produce food for a longer period. That is the whole essence. We are able to produce food that can sustain us for a longer period. Food security, very, very important. So the principles of permaculture are five. Or the ones that I know are five. If you know another one, so let me know. Me, I don't mind being told that. I don't mind learning. I think I really like learning. I really do. So if you know any other principle, you can let me know on my comment section. We are on Facebook at Afarmers, on YouTube we are at Afarmers Media. And then I'll be looking at that in the last part of the show, as we will be wrapping up, tukiwapatia the COVID updates kidogo kidogo, and then as we get ready for Conrad Kibe to be coming in for the Farm Drive show in the afternoon. So the first principle of permaculture is having a closed loop system. So when you have a closed loop system, let me tell you how it works. It actually entails, if you are in this system, you have your shamba, you have your house, you have your animals, you have your everything going on around. It ensures that you turn every waste that you have in your Kalitlika environment into resources. So every waste you have has to be turned into resources. There's nothing like waste in this sort of a system. You turn the waste into resources, or rather, it is more of turning problems into solutions. Yes. This thing that looks like a problem is actually offering a solution to these other components. So it is a sustainable way. Mostly people look at it in terms of providing your own energy. You know, the whole discussion we've been having about biofuels and how we really need to clean the environment by using biofuels. Yes. And then in terms of agriculture, we can look at it in terms of food and fertilizer. And here I mean by like providing your own fertility needs. Nothing goes to wastage. So you use livestock manure. If you have animals, the waste that they produce, that is not wastage, that is a resource that can be used in your farm. So you take the waste that you have, use it as livestock manure in your farm, or rather the use of cover crops. There's nothing like wastage in this place. But also in the closed loop system, we have to ensure that everything we have around, we are sustaining it using the components we have around. So if we have livestock, e.g., cattle, you have cows in your cow homestead, you have to ensure that these cows are sustained within this environment, like everything they need is actually gotten from this environment. So this can actually happen in terms of you can provide food for the livestock from this same environment. You can grow greens, you can grow forage crops, you can actually even recycle kitchen waste and give it to your livestock as their food. So everything, like, it is a closed loop system. You know, when I'm talking about closed, how do I illustrate this for you? A loop is something. Loop. It's round and then it's closed. So there's no getting out. Everything is within. It is within. Hakuna kutoka nje. Inakwanga within. So in a closed loop system, you ensure that everything is being sustained within. Within. The animals are being sustained within. You are producing your own energy, your own fuel that you're using here within. You have animals, but the food that they are getting is actually from within this same system. So that is more of the closed loop system. That is the first principle of permaculture. So as I talk about these, you can actually be thinking, what design is your farm structured like? Do you have a farm whereby you have your farm and you are growing plants, but at the same time you have livestock and you have to really be buying silage? Is that how your farm structure works like? How it looks like? So be thinking about it in form of your farm structure. How does it look like? Do you have a system whereby you can actually get everything you need within without going outside? Okay? Without actually outsourcing. Let me talk about outsourcing. Without outsourcing, do you have everything you need without outsourcing? So that is more of the closed loop system. The second principle of permaculture is growing of perennial crops. So I talked about growing of perennial crops when I had the discussion about regenerative agriculture. By the way, I will repeat again. If you missed the discussion about regenerative agriculture, because I think it is very timely, very important, especially for the African continent right now. We really need to restore our land resources. Regenerative agriculture is one show you shouldn't have missed, but if you did, iko pale Facebook, iko pale YouTube kama kawaida. Unaingia to a farmers, log into a farmers page and utapatana nayo hapo. It was done like 2 weeks ago, so hata utaitafuta for long, by the way. And if you really need it and you can't find it, just you just comment on my comment section. I send you the link like that. Sawa sawa. So perennial crops, we have different types of crops. So we have annual crops. Annual, just as the word is it annual or annual? Okay, depending on the school where you went to school. So annual crops are grown annually. So each single year you have to be planting these crops. And then we have perennial crops. So we've said the second principle of permaculture is a growing of perennial crops. So perennial crops aren't grown each single year. Most of them you find that they can stay in the farm 2 or more years before you really need to grow other crops. For example, let me use an example that is very common in Kenya. We have tea, we have coffee, and for people in Watongwa, Nigeria, people in Nigeria, you have something like cocoa. That is a perennial crop, something that you really don't really need to be planting each single year. And I think we have some of the herbs and spices that are actually perennial. I'll just try and find the exact thing for you. We have some herbs and spices that are actually perennial. You don't really need to be planting them over and over again. And I'll tell you how helpful this is or how important this is. You see, when I grow a perennial crop, like I'm growing it once, and then maybe I'll need to grow another one after 2 to 3 years. The first thing that happens, I will only till my land once of the time I'll be growing it. So next year, because I still have the crop in the farm, I don't really need to till my land. What have we done? We have minimized land tillage. When we are minimizing land tillage, you remember when I was talking about conservation agriculture? That is another show we did. So, conservation agriculture, and we are like, we need to really try almost getting to a point of zero tillage, because we realize the more we are tilling our lands, actually that's the problem with Africa. The more we are tilling our lands, we are degrading our lands. So we degrade our lands in terms of the nutrients are reduced, and also the soils become compact. If the soils become compact, if a soil is compact, let me say, you have, like, the way soil is structured, you have a layer of soil. This is a structure of soil, and then you always have the first layer, second layer, third layer, fourth layer. And then when the crop is growing, you find a crop can penetrate up to the third layer, but the root can actually penetrate up to the third layer, and from there it can actually absorb water and some other nutrients in that layer. But when your soil is compact, you find by the time you're getting to the second layer, the root can't actually penetrate past that point. So the root formation of the crop is actually hindered kidogo. It doesn't do as well as it should. The crop will not be able to access all the nutrients as it should, not be able to access water. A lot of things come into play. And you see, when you have all these things happening, definitely your crop production is affected. So perennial crops really help us to reduce the tillage that we are practicing in our farms. And the whole essence is we are trying to get to the point whereby we have zero tillage, like zero minimal tillage in our farms, in order for us to be able to conserve the land and to be able to regenerate. Yes, again, about regenerative agriculture, in order for us to regenerate our soils. So the third principle is every component should be able to perform multiple functions. Have you had a scenario whereby I can buy, if to say me, let me use a perfect example that I know of in our kitchen. So in our kitchen, you can choose to buy a grater, that, like the one you used to grate your carrots and stuff. And then you can also decide to buy a knife to be used to be peeling and cutting. Maybe you're peeling potatoes. And then I saw a very interesting development a while back. So there was a kawanka thing that was being sold. You can use it as a grater. You can use it as a peeler. You can even use it to slice. You see the way you slice potatoes into crisps in order for you to cook your crisps? You can use it like it is one thing that is performing around three functions. So you don't really need to be buying three different things. So this is the whole concept of a component performing multiple functions. So every component in the landscape should be able to fulfill more than one function. That makes it efficient. It's more or less the same. So let's say you have a fence. So you have animals in your farm. You have a fence that you use to contain your animals. Here's the thing. The fence should, you can have a fence in such a way that maybe your animals are on this side and then you have your plants on this side. On one way, the fence is actually working to maintain the animals on this side, okay? But also, this same fence is actually acting as a windbreaker for the plants. Yes, that is the ideology you need to be having when you are arranging your farm, when you are designing your farm for permaculture. It is sustainable agriculture. That's how we do it. Or also, you could be having, you see the way you harvest water? You have a rain barrel. So the rain barrel is harvesting water. So it is used to provide irrigation water, okay? But it can also be used to raise aquatic plants or maybe raise aquatic fish that can be consumed or sold. Like one thing has to be performing more than one function. There's nothing as useless as you having one thing that is performing one function. You see the way nowadays we have our phones. We can use our phones to call. We don't really need again to be having, like the way I have a desktop right here for me to access my social media pages. I can be using the same phone for my social media. I use it for my calls. I can use it to record meetings. I can use it to write my notes. Like you need something that is really functional, can perform several functions. So in a whole essence, the structure should be in a way that every component performs several functions, multiple functions. Again, think about your farm. How is your farm structured? Do you have components that are actually performing more than one function? Maybe it's something you should be thinking about as we continue having this discussion. We will be looking at two other principles of permaculture, but we'll do that after the show. We want us to go on a we will be doing that after the break. We want to go on a very short break, but when we come back, we'll be doing the two remaining principles of permaculture, and maybe we can suggest what really do can we do if maybe you're not already into these. What really can you do in your current farming system? What can you improve on? Or what can you change? What can you alter kidogo kidogo and make it functional to be in this system that we really need in order for us to be practicing sustainable agriculture? But keep sending me your comments on Facebook. We are at a farmers. On YouTube, we are at a farmers media. Write your comments on our comment section and I'll be looking at that as we come back from the break. So we are going on a short break. Make sure you're staying tuned in even for the last part of the show.
Here at the Farmers, we help you in the identification of crop-based diseases and nutrition deficiencies in crops for your successful farming. So if you want, I want to give you more information about the crop-based diseases, you can follow me in the farm to get more information from me. Hi farmers, as you can see here, we are doing cowpeas production, and this is an indigenous crop, vegetable crop. It was there in a traditional era. And see here, these crops are almost 1.5 weeks, and we have not used anything like manure, fertilizers, and sprays or agrochemicals. Uh, we have just watered them, and you can see, as you can see, they are very much healthy. As I have said that these indigenous crops, vegetables, we normally produce them on organic soil, but this crop also it requires different soils, and it grows in various soils, but the best soils where this variety grows or this type of crop grows is sand, because the roots will penetrate well without any disturbance, and the crop will be very healthy. The thing that is necessary, is most necessary here, is just water. Watering is essential, and to water, you can water them early in the morning and late in the evening. Why early in the morning and late in the evening? When the sun is not that hot, to reduce the evaporation rate, to ensure that your crop utilizes all water that you are putting in on it, to ensure that you have a dramatic yield per unit area. As you can see here, our bed is very clean, and we normally water every morning and every evening. I can urge farmers to enroll into this business, because cowpeas, it doesn't require those technical skills, management skills, and everything that is technical. There's nothing that is technical there. Uh, Farmers that have small scales, they can enroll into this business, because scales or these cowpeas doesn't require a large space, because they can get congested together, and you get a dramatic yield per unit area. That one of congestion together doesn't have any problem, because they do well. And as you know that this cowpeas, it is a leguminous crop, which and it fixes nitrogen in the soil, so it doesn't require any fertilizers to grow this cowpeas, because uh, it fixes nitrogen in the soil and uses it. So I can urge all farmers to enroll into this business. As you have a small farm, don't think that you are thinking for big things, which requires to be a plantation. This one you can have almost a half an acre, and you reap a lot. You can get more salary from this, more income from this, as you improve your living standards. So there's nothing like technical skills. I want to assure you that if you start, you will get good things and good yields. Uh, just maintaining uh, uh, good agricultural practices, to follow them all, and you will ensure that your crops are clean, your crops are healthy. When you do the proper sanitation, you will be removing all the weeds which can be host to the growing of pathogens, and also the hosts of these insect pests and diseases. So if you eradicate all shrubs and all obstacles from the farm to remain clean, you'll be able to achieve, and your production, your vegetable production, will be successful. So I will urge you all to enroll into this business, and you'll be happy, and happy to see your production coming out. Thank you.
afternoon to you. Welcome back to the Mid Morning Show. I am your host, Lillian Thomas. It is some 2 minutes to 1 o'clock, right? It's almost lunchtime, so we need to be wrapping up this so that people can go for lunch and you can join us again for the Farm Drive Show right here with Conrad Kibe as from 3 p.m. So today we've been having a discussion on permaculture. If you've just joined us right now, it might be more of a foreign thing that you're just hearing right now. But maybe I'll try and rephrase some things for you that we've actually covered when we started talking about permaculture. So permaculture, in a nutshell, it is more of trying to establish sustainable human settlements in food production environment. So you have a whole entity of things going around. You have human settlement, you have food production, you have animal production, and then you have several activities happening. You have things like forestry going on, you have water harvesting going on, a lot of things happening around the place. But in all these things, they need to be done sustainably because permaculture is a form of sustainable agriculture. And so that is more entirely what it is about. And then we looked at the ethics of what permaculture is. And the ethics of permaculture, the first ethic we had was caring for the earth, caring for the people, and reinvesting the surplus. And we said the golden rule that permaculture works with is once you care for the earth will take care of you. Once you care for the earth will take care of you. And then before we went on the show, we had started looking at the principles of permaculture. The first principle that we looked at was closed loop system. And we said in the closed loop system, your farming system should ensure that everything you need is actually found within this particular system. So it is more of in this particular system, we never have anything like wastage. There's nothing like wastage, there's nothing like loss. So in this system, you actually turn waste into resources because we said there is nothing like wastage. Something that looks like a problem is actually turned into a solution for another component. And we gave an example of providing your own fertility needs in this particular system. So you have like you're using livestock manure, which is waste from from your animals, and you're using it as manure in your shamba. You can be using cover crops. You actually also have, because you have livestock in the farm, you can be thinking of a way, how do you actually feed this livestock? You need to ensure that everything you need is within this particular system. So if you have livestock, you ensure that you are maybe growing food for the livestock within this area. You can be growing your grains, your forage crops, or maybe you're recycling kitchen waste, such that you are not outsourcing for most of these things. The second principle we mentioned is actually growing perennial crops. And I said perennial crop is a crop that you don't need to be growing each single year. You see something like maize, you need to be growing it each single year. But you have crops that you grow and they stay in the shamba for quite a while before you cut them down, or maybe before you nini them and then you plant others. And I give examples of these crops. I gave, for example, tea, you have coffee. For people like in Nigeria who do a lot of cocoa farming, the cocoa plants, those are some of the crops that you can grow perennially. And we said the greatest advantage about these. We said our largest problem right now in Africa is not that, oh, the climate may shift, oh, we have problems with water. Fine, we do rain-fed farming. Actually, we said 95% of sub-Saharan Africa does rain-fed farming. Yeah, it does. So rainfall actually plays a big role. If we have floods, it's a whole mess. If we have droughts, it is another whole mess. But that is not the largest problem that we have. The largest problem we have right now is the fact that our soils are degraded. Our land is actually degraded. It is not as productive as it should be. It is not as productive as it should be. So the whole system of growing perennial crops, when we had a discussion about regenerative agriculture, this was one of the practices that you can do in order to regenerate your soil, to restore your soils back and restore their fertility. Because once you do perennial crop growing, you don't really need to be tilling your land every now and then, every single year. When you minimize tillage in your shamba, when you have zero tillage in your shamba, or maybe you have reduced tillage, you tend to have more nutrients in your soil. Your soil tends to be in a good structure, because remember, we said a lot of tilling actually causes your soil to be compacted. And if your soil is compacted, the plant roots cannot penetrate well, they don't get enough nutrients, they don't get enough water. Terrible crop production. And the third principle that we covered just right before the break was every component performing multiple functions. Every component performing multiple functions. And I gave an example of the phones that we have. The phones that we have serve a lot of purposes. You make calls, you access your social media pages, you record, you can even record a lecture from it. You can write your notes on your phone. Like, this phone is functioning everything, it does a lot of purposes. And so the other aspect that we need in permaculture, you need to be having components that perform several functions. So if I have a structure in my shamba, it should be performing several functions, and it should not be limited to one function. So let me give an example of the example that I used before. If you have you have animals, okay? You have animals and you are containing them in one particular place or one particular position. In order to contain these animals in one particular position, you might need to use a fence, because if you have animals and maybe you have your plants growing on this other side, you will need to keep a boundary. So you keep a fence, okay? This fence can function as a fence right here to protect the animals and contain the animals on this one side, and it can also function as a windbreaker for these particular crops. Smart, right? I know. So you need to be doing everything in a very smart way, such that one thing you have in your shamba doesn't serve one purpose, it can serve several purposes. I gave another example of a rain barrel. A rain barrel is somewhere where maybe you harvest the water. You use it to provide water for irrigation. You can also be using it to raise aquatic fish. Serves two purposes as one, which is a win-win for you. So we have two last principles that we need to look at even as we wrap up the show. It is 1 o'clock. I am hungry, so and it's past time. We should be ending the show at 1. So two last principles and we are done with the show. So the fourth principle is eco earthwork. Eco like ecology, and then earthwork. Earthwork ni earth and work. Earth plus work combined. Eco earthwork. So this looks at more into water conservation. You remember when I started the show, I started talking about the floods happening, and no one is tapping into the water. The floods are happening, and then after some time, the water will percolate into the ground. This water wasn't used, it goes just like that, and then that is done. And I gave an example of us actually constructing reservoirs or dams, okay, in order to harvest this water. So the eco earthwork principle actually looks at water conservation. There are several ways you can conserve your water. So we have this whole thing of maybe building dams and reservoirs, which I think should be done in most countries in Africa, because the issue we have with drought and stuff, because maybe you never harvested your water, it is a whole lot issue. So eco earthwork actually looks at water conservation. You can have construct your dams, or rather construct reservoirs to harvest your water. And again, yesterday the conversation we were having, and we were saying you have people right now, it is raining, who are in steepy slopes. In steepy slopes, you find that there is a lot of runoff. A lot of runoff. One, water is being wasted. Two, you are losing nutrients from your soil. So for such a place, you construct actually terraces that help control the runoff from happening. The last principle of permaculture that we'll be talking about is simple. This is the last thing: letting nature do the work for you. I said, what is the golden rule of permaculture? If you actually, the golden rule of permaculture is, once you care for the earth will take care of you. The last principle we have in permaculture is letting nature do the work for you. Like I said, in permaculture, you work with nature, you don't work against nature. So I have a very interesting example for this. You see the way, have you ever actually observed chicken? Chicken kitchen, chicken, right? Have you ever observed chicken? Chicken is the one we eat. No, let's use the word hens. Have you ever observed hens in their day-to-day operations? Do you see how hens look for food? Hens, they keep scratching the ground in order to find the worms and the two grains and everything. They keep scratching the ground. The best example I can use is that is like it is a natural thing to them. So the natural scratching behavior of the hens can be used. You can be used. It can be used. You can harness it and you use it to clear an area of pests and weeds, especially when you're preparing your land for planting. Because remember, it keeps scratching. It will dig out pests, eat a cooler. By the way, it eats I don't know why do we eat chicken? Why on earth do we eat chicken? Because the things that this thing eats. Maybe ndio kwa maana kuku ya kienyeji is so good, right? Because the things it eats, where it eats worms. Now we are talking about pests and it actually feeding on weeds. That is about it. So the structure in your farm, because we said we are working towards achieving sustainable agriculture in order to achieve zero hunger by the time we are getting to 2030. That is the SDG goal two. Number two. Number two, if I'm not wrong. SDG's goal number two is zero hunger. And then we need to attain food security because the population is increasing. By the time we are getting to 2050, we are 9 billion in the world. Sustainable agriculture is the only solution for us. In sustainable agriculture, we need to maintain the environment. One way of sustainable agriculture is permaculture. Permaculture is one thing that you can do. Look at the farming situation you have in your shamba. Do you have components that are performing one function or more than one function? Are you actually tapping into nature? Is nature working for you? And also, what kind of crops are you growing? Do you keep tilling your land over and over again, like the annual crops? You keep tilling your land and you're degrading your soils. And then within your system, can you actually get everything you need within your system? Maybe it's something that you should be thinking of. If you have a farm and you're still outsourcing for things from outside, it's something you should be thinking about. Okay, the eco earthwork. Are you conserving water? Because we said we depend on rain-fed farming in Africa, 95% of sub-Saharan Africa. Rainfed farming is very, very important for us. So we need to really conserve the water such that in cases of drought and in cases of floods, we are still able to produce. That has been it about principles of permaculture, and that is it about permaculture. So this is something to get you into thinking and looking into your farming system, what it looks like. How have you arranged your farm? What do you need to be doing better? How can you achieve sustainable agriculture as a whole? So I am done with the show. My discussion is done right there. But tomorrow is a holiday. Our Muslim brothers and sisters are concluding their Ramadan period. Tomorrow is Eid Mubarak holiday, and we wish you a very, very, very happy happy Eid Mubarak. That will be happening tomorrow. Okay? Is it Eid Mubarak? Is it Eid al-Fitr? What did I say? Question on that note. But even as we are going for this casual holiday, because I know from tomorrow people won't be reporting to work. Actually, it's Eid al-Fitr. It is Eid al-Fitr that will be happening tomorrow. As from tomorrow, I know people won't be reporting to work, but the reminders are out here about COVID-19. So let me do the COVID-19 updates in Kenya as at yesterday. And then I remind you of the precautionary measures that we need to be doing even to wrap up this. So, as at yesterday in Kenya, the positive cases were 410. in a sample size of 3,799, the positivity rate is at 10.8%, the recoveries are 67, and the number of deaths are 22%. Now, let me tell you one thing that I have observed with Kenyans. One day the positivity rate is high, one day it's going lower. Was it yesterday? No, the other day when I did the COVID updates, the positivity rate was at 3 points. Actually, it was at 3.6%. Jana, it was at 10.8%. We really need to do more. We really need to do more. We really need to get rid of this pandemic because it has really affected us. The economy, people not getting jobs, even us, we're not even sure the person you're seated next to, will you be okay tomorrow when you finish? No, you're not okay. So, a reminder, as you go out here, as you go to public places, as you are interacting during this holiday weekend, remember, you put on your mask, it covers your nose and mouth. That is the rule. It covers your nose and mouth. Kuna hii tabia ya kuweka mask hapa kwa shingo. That is not what should be happening. Let it cover your nose and mouth. Rule number 2. Remember to wash your hands regularly. You wash your hands for 20 seconds. If you can't, regularly sanitize. Very, very important. And Nara keeps telling you here, DJ Nara keeps saying, if you can't afford a sanitizer from the market, from the supermarket, from your shops, she says it's very easy to make a sanitizer. You just need to mix your glycerin and your spirit. That is all about it. Mix your glycerin and your spirit in the right amounts. You have your sanitizer and it will work for you. So make sure you're sanitizing your hands regularly. And the golden rule of all, keep social distance. Keep social distance. 1.5 meters is the recommended distance. So keep social distance. Allah. And it is a weekend. So when you are going on the weekend, it is a holiday. Can you just be nice? Yes, be nice, be kind. If you have an opportunity to help someone, please help someone. I have a story of someone who helped me the other day. Story for another day. But if you have an opportunity to help someone, help someone. Be kind and be nice. And remember the quote that I said today. If you forget everything else that I've said, whatever you are, be a good one. Aim at being the best version of you. Aim at being the best version of you, even during this weekend. This is where I'll be wrapping up the show. But Conrad Kibe will be coming in for the Farm Drive show at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. That guy does very amazing shows. You don't really want to miss that. A lot of knowledge, a lot of content, all things you need to know about getting into farming. This week, he's been dwelling on herbs. Yesterday, he did something on garlic. The other day, he did something on ginger. We can't wait to see what he has for us today. So make sure you're staying tuned in for the Farm Drive show that starts at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. with Conrad Kibe. And then, because I know it's the holiday, we will be meeting again on Monday. DJ Nara and Ashley Marion will be here for the breakfast show. But as from me, it is a goodbye from me and have a fantastic day.